The knock comes an hour past midnight in the deepest week of winter. And then the voice. It calls the son of the house by name, and it is his mother's voice, warm and worried, asking him to open the door. But his mother is sitting right there, by the fire, with her hand pressed over his mouth. In the mountain villages of the Black Sea coast, they know this visitor. For 40 nights each winter, the nights the old calendar calls zemheri, the killing cold, something walks the snow-buried lanes wearing borrowed voices the way a man wears a coat. The elders gave it a name they only whisper indoors, the Karakoncolos. And they passed down one law above all others, from grandmother to child, for 1,000 years. After dark, in the 40 nights, the door does not open to a name. Because the thing that knows your name is not always your mother. They describe him the way you describe something glimpsed once and never forgotten. Huge. Hunched almost double, as if the cold itself had bent him. Wrapped in shaggy, matted fur that might be a coat and might be his own hide. No one has looked long enough to be sure. By day, nothing. He belongs to the 40 nights, and in some villages they say he climbs out of the rivers, because in zemheri the running water belongs to him and to his kind. What the hunters remember is never the face, no one remembers a face. What they remember is the trail, enormous footprints pressed deep into fresh snow, crossing the pasture in a dead straight line. Barefoot. In cold that cracks the trees. If he stops you on the road, the elders say, he will ask you 3 questions. Always 3. Where do you come from? Where are you going? What is your name? And your life hangs on a single rule, drilled into every child of the coast before they are old enough to walk the high paths alone. Whatever you answer, the word Kara, black, must live inside it. I come from Karahiza, the Black Fortress. I am bound for Karayaka, the Black Shore. My name is Kara Mehmet, Black Mehmet. As long as the Dark One hears his own color in your mouth, he cannot touch you. But stammer, hesitate, give him an answer with no darkness in it, and they will find you at first light, face down in the drifts or floating beneath the ice. 3 questions. 1 word. That is the whole toll of the winter road. And the first of its doors. So for 40 nights, the villages arm themselves, but gently, in the strangest way. The fire is never allowed to die, embers are banked like treasure. No one draws water from the stream after dark, because the stream is his. No one walks out alone, and the door answers to no voice, however beloved. And then, the tenderest defense in all of Anatolian folklore. Before the household sleeps, the woman of the house cooks kuymak, cornmeal folded into butter and cheese, rich enough to shine in the firelight. And she fills a bowl, and leaves it by the hearth. Not hidden. Offered. Because the belief is exact, the Karakoncolos comes in from the cold, finds the warm bowl waiting, eats his fill by the embers, and leaves the sleeping family untouched. A monster that walks through walls of iron and stone, disarmed by a warm supper. As if what stalks the 40 nights were not hunting at all. As if it were only, terribly, hungry. Along the Black Sea coast he is Karakoncolos, or simply Konkolos. Inland, in the villages of central Anatolia, the word softens to Kongolos. Cross the border into Bulgaria and he is the karakondjul, in Serbia, the karakondjula. Follow the word far enough back and it dissolves into Greek, kallikantzaros. Same nights. Same snow. Same visitor. A demon, it turns out, does not respect borders, only calendars. And his calendar is precise, the darkest, coldest stretch of the year, when the sun is weakest and the nights have no bottom. Which raises the first real question of this story. Why does every people of the winter latitudes lock its doors on exactly the same nights? The Greeks tell it with a detail that has haunted me since I first read it. Their kallikantzaros spend the whole year underground, soaring at the trunk of the world tree that holds up the earth. Every winter, just as the trunk is about to give way, they hear that the 12 days have come, and they swarm up to the surface to torment the living instead, sliding down chimneys, souring the milk, riding men like horses in the dark. For 12 nights they infest the villages. Then, on the Feast of the Waters, the priests bless the springs, and the creatures flee underground, to find the world tree healed whole again. An entire year of soaring, undone. In the Alps, on those same nights, the Krampus and the perched hen walk with bells and birch rods. In Serbia and Bulgaria, the unclean days. In Anatolia, the 40 of Zemheri. Different names, different gods, one instinct, when the year turns through its darkest hinge, something is loose between the worlds, and the wise stay home. But his claws are not what the coast fears most. What they fear is the voice. Because the Karakoncolos does not knock and wait like a stranger. He stands beneath your window in the dead hours and he calls you in the one voice you cannot refuse. Your mother, asking for help. Your brother, hurt on the mountain. Your wife, locked out in the cold. The accounts agree on the cruel detail, the voice is perfect. And so you rise. You dress. You step into the snow and follow it, and the voice stays always one house further, one bend further, patient as winter itself, leading you up past the last barn, past the last light, into the open white. The ones who come back describe how it felt, not like being hunted. Like being expected. The ones who do not come back are found days later, far above the village, and what the searchers find, we will speak of in a moment, because it is the key to this entire story. And here the folklore records two details so strange that for centuries they could only be explained by magic. The frozen were found half-dressed. Coats folded or flung aside, boots off, shirts open to a cold that kills in minutes, as if, at the end, they had felt not the ice but a furnace. The villagers said, the Karakoncolos strips his victims, to shame them. And the second detail. Many were not found in the open at all, but wedged into the smallest shelters the mountain offers, rock hollows, root caves, the gap beneath a fallen fir, curled tight, hidden so well the search parties walked past them for days. The villagers said, he hides them, to mock us. Hold both details in your mind. The stripping. The hiding. Folklore wrote them down perfectly, it only mislabeled the author. The fear is old, older than the names it wears. Byzantine scribes complained of the kallikantzaros 1,000 years ago, monsters of the unbaptized nights between Christ's birth and the blessing of the waters. Rome, centuries earlier, had marked the same dead stretch of the year with Saturnalia, masters serving slaves, order turned deliberately upside down, as if the calendar itself had come loose. And the old Turkic reckoning split winter's heart into 2 40s, and named the first one zemheri, a word that still tastes of iron and empty roads. Every calendar that ever crossed these mountains drew a fence around the same handful of nights. Not because a story traveled. Because a truth kept being rediscovered, these are the nights the cold stops being weather, and becomes a door. Inside the houses, the rules were kept like prayers. Keep the fire alive, the cold must never own the room. Keep the bowl by the hearth, feed what wanders, and it will not feed on you. Do not fetch water after dark. Do not cross the high pasture alone, not for any voice, not for any reason. And the deepest rule, the one the grandmothers repeated with their hands on the children's faces, if the night calls your name, be silent. It will call 3 times. Let it call. Once, twice, 3 times, and if you have answered nothing, it will turn and go back to the dark it came from. 3 calls. Remember that number. At the end of this story, it will open like a door. The second door. Now open a modern mountain rescue manual and read the winter protocol. Never travel alone in a storm. Never leave shelter at night. Keep a heat source burning. Keep high-calorie, high-fat food ready. Do not trust your own judgment once the shivering stops. Hypothermia's first theft is the mind. Read the list twice and you realize, with a shiver of your own, that you have heard it all before, from women who could not read, guarding hearths on this same coast, 500 years ago. Fire kept alive. Butter and cornmeal by the hearth. No one walks alone. No one follows voices. The Karakoncolos rules are a cold survival protocol, wearing a monster as its enforcement. The village did not know the physiology. It knew the body count. And it wrote its field manual in the only ink that never fades, fear. But the voice. The rules explain the fire, the food, the company, but not the voice. Dozens of accounts, centuries apart, all swearing the same thing. I heard my mother. I heard my son. It knew my name. Were they lying? No. Every one of them told the truth. The voice was real. It simply was not coming from the snow. Science found where it comes from, and the answer is stranger, and sadder, and far more intimate than any demon. Here is what the cold actually does to a human being, documented in every mountain morgue report of the modern era. As the core cools, the body pulls its blood inward, sacrificing skin and fingers to keep the heart warm. The shivering is violent, then, ominously, it stops. And then, in deep hypothermia, the blood vessels at the surface suddenly fail and fly open, and a flood of warm blood rushes outward into freezing skin. The dying feel it as unbearable heat. They are burning in the snow. So they undress. Rescue statistics say between a quarter and half of severe hypothermia victims are found partially or fully unclothed, the coats folded neatly, because in their minds they were simply too warm. The stripping. And in the last stage, something older than reason takes the controls, a primitive burrowing reflex, seen also in freezing animals, drives the dying to wedge themselves into the smallest shelter they can find, under roots, into rock hollows, beneath the snow itself. The hiding. And the voice? A brain starved of warmth and oxygen does not go dark quietly. It hallucinates, and hypothermia's hallucinations are famously auditory, famously familiar. The freezing brain reaches for the most deeply worn paths it owns, the voices of the people we love. Mountaineers call it the third man. The dying cold calls you by name, in your mother's voice, and urges you gently onward. Every detail the villagers blamed on the Karakoncolos, the luring voice, the stripped bodies, the hidden dead, is the signed confession of the cold itself. The demon was a forensic report, for centuries early, written in fur and fear. The neurologists recorded the last voice of the freezing brain. And the recording explained everything, except the question it left behind. If the voice was made by the dying mind, Why did it always say the same things? Why always a door? A threshold? Science solved the sound and stood silent before the sentence. There is an older recording of this night. It survives in a single word, a word English has never managed to translate. Amar. Amar. The darkness where the divine dwelt before creation. The place all things came from, and the place all things return. Now ask the question backwards. Is darkness truly darkness? Or is what men call light the veil that keeps them busy, and what they call darkness, the secret a man keeps from himself? Then perhaps the voice in the snow was never calling to man at all. Perhaps when we answered it, Kara, naming the dark by its own name, it was us, calling inward, to the self that waits below the dark. Because at the floor of your darkness there is a door. It opens onto the first morning, when the divine declared, I am your Lord, and every soul, standing in its body of light, answered yes. The road asked 3 questions.
Mother.
Where do you come from? Where are you going? What is your name? The villagers had spoken the answer at every funeral, all along. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi rajiun. From him we came, to him we return. He is calling you home. To yourself. The grandmothers said, it calls 3 times, stay silent, and it leaves. And the road asked 3 questions. The numbers were never chance. From a sleep this deep, no one wakes at a single call. One call for the outer body, the one that walks in the snow. One for the body of fire, the one the warm bowl by the embers was set to greet. Fire recognizes fire, that bowl was a single sentence, spoken in the second body's language, we are not enemies anymore. And one call for the body of light, the one that said yes on the first morning. Even the snow he crosses to reach you is light, fallen and settled on the earth. A voice like that is not answered with the tongue. The unready stay silent through all 3, and are spared. The ready one hears all 3, and answers with what he is. 3 calls. 3 answers. This is not the end of a fear. It is the beginning of an invitation. Because the thing that knows your name has always been waiting for you to answer.
Mother.
Next time. In the oldest graveyards of Anatolia, the villagers knew a terrible sign, a grave where the snow will not settle. The earth above it stays warm. Because the one below is not finished, he rises at night, hungry for the strength of the living, and he always visits his own family first. The Turks named him the Obur, the glutton. Centuries before Europe learned the word vampire, the steppe already knew how to find him, how to bind him, and which single mistake sets him loose. Bring a lantern. And perhaps an iron nail.